Hey friends, thanks once again for tuning into the TCS Digital Connect. We hope you're finding our podcast series useful and informative.
Dear listeners, welcome to another episode of TCS Digital Connect podcast series. Today we have Mr. Bimal Shah with us, who heads production management and architecture in TCS Ion. TCS Ion is a pure play product unit and offers digital products and platforms for conducting examinations, for education, and for business processes in India and abroad. These TCS products are hosted in TCS cloud data centers worldwide. Over the past 12 years, he led his TCS Ion team to put together a cloud service that is scalable and easily accessible besides getting all the Ion solution certified for security and performance. Bimal has expertise in networking, multimedia, assessments, and manufacturing domains. While in TCS, he has helped establish a startup, managed customer relationships, and led architecture teams of critical IT programs. So, welcome, sir, to this episode of TCS Digital Connect.
Yeah, thank you for the generous introduction, Nishant. It's great to be here and I look forward to it. I thank you for this opportunity to connect with the young listeners. So we can get going. Today's topic is cloud computing.
So as you rightly mentioned, we would be going to discuss about cloud computing. So, my first question to you is cloud computing is something of which everyone would be aware of these days. But if a person who does not know anything about cloud, how would you explain it to him? And what are the key benefits of using cloud computing?
Yeah, I always give this example that you can compare it, or the best way to understand is to understand when you rent a house. When you move into a new city, you obviously don't buy a house because you do not know how long you are going to stay in that city, whether you are going to be making that city your home for a long time. So, what do? You look out for a rental place. You look out for a shared accommodation, maybe a PG or a flat you can share with other flatmates. And why do you do that? Essentially, you are looking for a lower outgo, right? You don't want to tie up a lot of money in some property when you are not sure of your long-term commitment. These are the primary reasons. And cloud computing is very similar. For so many decades, organizations, businesses had been purchasing a computing capacity, and it was a huge investment. These were sophisticated equipment, and then they would use that capacity over a period of time, and they would maintain it. But typically, hardware, like all other technology, does get obsolete in 4, 5, 6 years, and they would then reinvest into new hardware, upgrade that hardware. So it was a major investment from all the businesses. And then they would have to recover that investment by using that infrastructure. So this was clearly an inefficient model that the industry has been following. And just as in other ways, somebody thought about a very interesting model that why should a business tie up its resources in infrastructure, which anyway gets obsolete in 5 to 6 years? Can we have a, so to say, a rental model, a subscription model? And that's where what cloud computing is, that you can go out and rent computing capacity, uh, IT infrastructure, IT resources on demand. You can get it immediately. You can get it in an OPEX model. That is, you are not going to spend a lot of money. You are going to spend some amount of money, and you would be charged only on how much you use and for how long you use. Now, if you make an investment in any resource, even if when you are not using, you are paying for it, right? Because it's something that you own, and if you don't use it, it's just going to lie around, and you are paying for it. But that's not the case when you rent out something. So that's a good analogy to use as to when you rent out a house, and if things don't work out, you get a different job, you are moving out of the city, then you can just give up that accommodation and move on. And similarly, businesses can, for whatever reasons, if their projects or business doesn't work out, they can just, so to say, unsubscribe or return their rented computing capacity and move out, right? And it's obviously a shared model because all that's when the cost can be reduced and attractive. So you have this multi-tenant. Just as in a rental model, the people who rent are called tenants. We have a similar concept that people who rent computing infrastructure are tenants, and because they share infrastructure, it is called multi-tenant. Multiple tenants are sharing resources. You share resources essentially to reduce your cost. But as in any resource, you have shared areas and you have private areas. So if you are staying in a apartment with your flatmates, maybe you are sharing a kitchen, but you have your own bedroom. So a very similar way that you would have in your computing capacity. Certain things you would like to share. The more you share, obviously, the lesser would be your cost. But you would obviously do not want certain people to enter to share certain resources within the apartment, and that's practically perfectly fine. Say, for example, you don't want your data to be shared, so your database server is private, so to say, it's dedicated for you. You are not going to share that with anyone. That's possible. And the other aspect when you are sharing resources is that the same resource should behave differently for different tenants. And so a good example here would be a TV. Suppose you have a shared TV in the living room. All the flatmates are sharing that TV. Uh, Different people could configure the TV for different favorite TV content. So somebody likes English content, somebody likes original content. Or if you take a washing machine, somebody likes a different kind of a washing cycle, and somebody else likes a different washing cycle. While the resource is same, it can be configured to behave differently, and that's also true for IT infrastructure or IT software, which is right. And the key attributes of cloud computing then is, if you can see, and this has been defined by one of the analysts very well, is that it is a service model. So what was essentially hardware or a product like it is now a service. It's not that you are going to buy infrastructure, you're going to subscribe to infrastructure. So it has been converted into a service. It is shared. We talked about it. That's how you reduce your cost. Another important thing is it is scalable and elastic. That is, if your needs increase, then you can get more of computing on demand. And elastic in the sense that when your needs go away, then you can scale down. And that would not be possible if you own the resource. If you were to owning your resource and you say that, okay, I have a very important event coming, just buy more hardware, but after the event, what would you do with that hardware, right? So, if you have rented it out, you could just return that, and it is metered by use. That is, you are charged exactly as per how much you use it, how for how long you use it, and those resources are available over internet. You don't have to go anywhere from your homes, from your offices. You just have an internet connection and a mechanism to pay for them, an electronic payment mechanism. You can get it. No touch, no connect, no credit, nothing. Absolutely very straightforward and simple processes to get computing on demand. So this is what cloud computing is. That these are the key attributes. It is service based. It is shared, scalable, elastic. It is metered by use, and it is internet technology.
So that's an interesting analogy you gave to the audience, that it is just about renting a house in a new city when you go. And you talked about a lot of businesses that they're moving to these sort of a cloud services. So we can see that a lot of organizations are also moving on cloud these days, and why cloud computing has become so relevant to them, because we saw this recent lockdown situation. So now they're focusing on moving their services on cloud. So I just want to know, so why this cloud services became so popular and important during this lockdown situation?
So cloud computing started getting very popular from say 2008 or so. There was some sort of a buzz created from 2006 onwards. And I think from 8, 9, 10, that's when really cloud computing came into its own. And primarily, it makes a lot of sense, right? That why would you tie up your scarce resources in something which is anyway going to get obsolete in 4 or 5 years. So, but there are other huge advantages. The biggest advantage probably is time. These are computing capacity available to you just now. So, if I need, say, 100 computers just now, I can get from a cloud computing service, and not one, multiple services. I have a choice. And that, I believe, is the biggest problem in any enterprise. That if you are a Nishant Singh working in marketing in TCS, you have a project idea and you want to execute that idea very rapidly. And what would happen is that you would ask for computing resources, and then you would say that no, you have to go through a certain procurement process, and that will take certain weeks or certain months. But if you want to try out your idea and get it out there, what would you do? You said that, okay, I will rent out that computing capacity. So I think that time and this ability to get it on demand just now, and you don't have to depend upon IT staff, right? You are the business. You are a business leader. You want to execute a project which is going to have an impact on your business. You want it done now. You need computing capacity. You get it. So that is the biggest benefit that you get. The second one is which CFOs will love is you are not tying up a large amount of money. Overall, you possibly could be spending more. That's true for any rental model, right? That suppose if you keep on renting a house and you keep on paying the rent for 10 years, maybe it was wiser to actually buy the house 10 years ago, right? Because you ended up paying a rent for 10 years and you don't own any. But a lot of times you don't know whether you're going for 10 years, and that's insight. So obviously you love to have that, okay, I have some outgo and let me pay the rent, and I don't know whether I should be tying up and taking a huge loan and tying up my house. I may be going abroad for all I know. So that's the other huge advantage. The other one is that, see, by definition, cloud is available anywhere in the world. If you have your own computing capacity, it is limited to your organization. Suppose you manage to get certain computing resources, but they are visible within your organization, right? Wherever your organization is. Your organization could be worldwide, but then they can be accessed typically only through your internal network. But when you are on the cloud and you develop a very hard-hitting application, and which you want not only your employees to access, but even maybe your customers or potential customers or partners or anybody out in the world, maybe even a public to access, or we may want certain applications, potential employees to access. Then, and they could be anywhere in the world. By definition, as soon as you put up that application, it is available worldwide. You can places the world by just sitting here, and that's also a huge advantage. You are not only getting a computing capacity on demand, it is getting you in a favorable commercial model, but you are getting it anywhere in the world. It is visible and accessible from any part of the world, and that means that you are able to execute your project, create your application, and get it out there very rapidly. The other great advantages are that this players of Amazon or Microsoft or Google or any other cloud players, they have managed even for their own businesses and computing capacity for so many organizations that they have gone through all kinds of experiences, and their experiences they are bringing to the table here. So when you subscribe to a cloud computing service, you also get all the good practices that you need to follow. And if you were to do it on your own, you probably have to learn the hard way. So all this, you will get a secure infrastructure, which you may not be able to do it immediately if it were your own. And you will get a whole lot of features which will help you make your application very fast. Essentially, you can get going very fast. And the other great advantage is that very small organizations, small startups, or even a student can create an application, host it on a cloud, and create a huge impact. And he can take on even a well funded incumbent or other large players, right? So, somebody with a great idea, he's just sitting at home. In this situation, he's got a great idea of which could help, say, potentially, order food from nearby places and give it out to people who cannot cook or who are incapacitated in some way in the current situation, and he can just become your local Swiggy, and he wants to create such an app. He can host that app immediately in a highly secure and reliable manner, and get going and try out his idea. If it idea works out, great. If it doesn't work out, fine. It's not much lost. He can just uninstall and deprovision his computing capacity, and that's it. So these are the reasons why it makes sense to go to cloud computing. In the current situation, people realized that when they are forced to be at home, their applications, their infrastructure was not accessible from home. And all the applications which were on the cloud were accessible. Naturally, they had to open up certain routes, and those applications became accessible. And everyone who had applications tied up in their data centers, not opened out, they had a huge problem. So that's essentially the reason why it makes sense.
Thank you, sir, for sharing this insight about the cloud computing, why it is becoming so popular, and why it is going to be the future of future in the technology area.
At this point, we end our part 1 of the podcast. In the next part, we will discuss about different levels of managed services of cloud computing, TCS Ion contribution in the area of cloud computing, and about prominent players in cloud computing services. So stay tuned for part 2.
Thank you, friends, for tuning into the TCS Digital Connect. Eager for the next episode? Well, stay safe and stay connected at Campus Commune for more.